Hello, my name is Chris Shoemaker, and this presentation is for IL 707, and the title of my presentation is the Students First Act of 2011. What I've done here is summarize the major points concerning this act. They are on the slides to follow. The topics that I'll be covering regarding the Students First Act of 2011 include who is covered, what is protected, and what are the specifics. And under specifics, I have four categories that I'm going to be discussing in more detail in terms of the Students First Act. They are non-renewals and terminations, reassignments and transfers, suspensions, partial cancellations, and reduction in force. Now, while I'll be hitting on all four of these specific categories, certain details I have left off for the sake of time, and I'll explain those when we get to those points in the presentation. First off, who is covered by the Students First Act of 2011? I've got four groups that I'll explain a little bit more in detail on. We have the LEAs and boards of education throughout the state, and by that I mean they are covered by the Students First Act because of the decision-making power that they are given. Within the boards of education, we have the chief executive officers and/or superintendents of these local districts. And while state superintendents, or local superintendents rather, are not necessarily given tenure and those protections, so to speak, they also have the decision-making power to execute the specifics that will be discussed later. We also have two-year colleges and the governing board of those two-year colleges. Similarly to the LEAs and boards of education, they do have decision-making rights that are covered under the Students First Act. And similarly to the superintendents and CEOs, we have our two-year college presidents throughout the state. They too are covered under the Act due to the powers that they have from their position. I would like to add here with the two-year college specifically that there is a lot of verbiage and language within the Students First Act that relates to the judiciary rules and the decision-making processes and the procedures that two-year colleges use that are alike in some ways and different in others from the LEAs and local boards of education. So I will not be getting into those details regarding two-year colleges as this presentation is going to be focused primarily on how it relates to school boards and schools and teachers. We also have the Department of Youth Services, and the leaders and directors of those facilities are also covered under the Students First Act, again, for the same reasons that I've listed earlier. And also to this point, I will not be going into a deep dive of these specifics with the youth services departments because of time, and I will be focusing on its impact and summarization of the school boards. Finally, we have teachers and non-probationary classified employees. This is the major group that is covered by the Students First Act, and that's where I'll be spending most of my time. Second, what is protected? The main protection under the Students First Act of 2011 is regarding personnel decisions and tenure status. The personnel decisions for quite some time prior to this act were handled through an arbitrator, like an independent or outside mediator, to make these decisions. What the Students First Act of 2011 did is it moved the personnel decisions, specifically with regards to hearings, back into the control of the local boards of education, the LEAs. So this didn't really take power away from the state, it just transitioned power back to local school boards, and therefore kind of eliminating an independent arbitrator or mediator to make these decisions. Also regarding tenure status, the Students First Act of 2011 clarified the tenure status for teachers, two-year college professors, and even further with non-probationary status with classified employees. Tenure status for teachers currently under the Students First Act of 2011 is 3 consecutive years of teaching. The two-year college professors earn tenure with 6 consecutive semesters. Now, this is a little bit different than the teacher tenure side of it, in that semesters change from year to year and the course offerings change. So a two-year college professor must be employed as a professor at that two-year college for 6 consecutive semesters for 3 years. As far as non-probationary status goes, the classified employees that this applies to, they must be employed for 3 consecutive years in order to receive non-probationary status. They are considered probationary until then, or non-tenured, as the teachers will be called as well. Moving on. Specifically, the first category we'll look at under the specifics of the Students First Act of 2011 is non-renewals and terminations. This decision is made by the CEO or superintendent of a school district. The 15-day bullet that I have here refers to notifications and compensation and benefits. If an employee is to be non-renewed or recommended for termination, they are to be notified within 15 days of that non-renewal or termination date. And also, past the non-renewal or termination date, their compensation and benefits will run 15 days after that date. So 15 days before for notification of the action, and 15 days after is the time frame for their compensation and benefits to last. As far as hearings go, tenured and non-probationary employees do have the right to a hearing. They can request a hearing, and those specific dates and deadlines and timeframes are listed in more detail through the references that I have at the end of this presentation. But then non-tenured and probationary employees do not have the right to a hearing before the school board as far as the decision making of that goes. That power lies within the hands of the superintendent. You might be wondering what this June 15 and 30 date is in reference to, and that is a date that the school system and superintendent must have circled on their calendar in terms of making sure people have been made aware and that the decision has been made regarding non-renewals and terminations. June 15th is the deadline. If the employee is not made aware of the decision by June 15th, then they are considered re-employed by the school district. There is an exception to this June 15th date, which pushes it back to June 30th. This June 30th date is for the quadrennial meetings of the state legislature. This happens every 4 years, and on these quadrennial years, the date of employee notification for non-renewal and termination is pushed from June 15th to June 30th. Anything after June 30th, and these once every 4 years, also means the employee is considered re-employed. Next, we have reassignments and transfers. Reassignments and transfers are allowed by the superintendents of the local school boards or CEOs. The employee impacted by this must be notified by the 20th day of the school year. Lots of action takes place within those first 20 days, most notably with attendance reporting and its ties to funding and that sort of thing. So the employee must be made aware of their transfer or reassignment by the 20th day of the school year. These next three bullets kind of go hand in hand, and that is reassignment or transfer based on position, compensation, and location. Now, there are specific rights that are granted to tenured and non-probationary employees when it comes to these things, but basically superintendents can transfer or reassign someone to same or lesser position, same or lesser compensation, and same or different location. Now, the location could mean outside of that employee's high school feeder pattern based on where they work. Now, again, the same hearing rules apply. A superintendent can reassign or transfer a non-tenured or probationary employee without granting them a hearing. Teachers who are tenured and non-probationary may have the right to a hearing if they are reassigned or transferred to a lesser position of lesser pay or in a location not ideal and outside of their high school feeder pattern. Next, we have terminations in terms of certificate actions. This is a certain area that people may not know a lot about, and hopefully the information in the Students First Act of 2011 will shed some light on that. In terms of license revocation, if a teacher's license is revoked for any reason, that could lead to what the law calls summarily terminated or immediately terminated. And to the opposite of that, if the decision on the license revocation is overturned, then that teacher's license will be automatically reinstated. Now, however, the teacher, still could be facing some personnel action and that sort of thing based on the events. But as far as licensure goes, if it's revoked, they could be immediately terminated. If it's overturned, it could be automatically reinstated. In terms of suspensions, superintendents and CEOs of school districts can place employees on paid administrative leave pending an investigation. Now, this 20-day mark is key as well. Any suspensions less than 20 days, the teacher doesn't have a right to conference with the board or meet with the board in terms of the reasons why while the investigation is taking place. If it's greater than 20 days of suspension, then that teacher, if tenured, I want to stress, if tenured, has the right to meet before the board to discuss specifics of the suspension. But again, less than 20 days, no action can be taken. Greater than 20 days, tenured teachers and non-probationary employees have a little bit more leeway in terms of requesting a meeting with the school board. In terms of reinstatement and compensation, if the employee is reinstated, then back pay or back compensation will be awarded to that individual. Again, if a teacher is reinstated or employee is reinstated, then the compensation will be paid back. Final topic I want to talk about in terms of specifics of the Students First Act of 2011 is parcel cancellations and reduction in force. Two major points in terms of ways in which this may happen. First is enrollment. An employee can be let go due to a reduction in force because student enrollment has decreased at that particular school. Also, if revenue decreases at a particular school, we all know attendance is tied to revenue, to funding and that sort of thing. If for some reason the funding sources drop or the money coming in decreases or student enrollment decreases, then an employee can be either let go or transferred or that sort of thing. Those are the two main reasons that we have reduction in force. As far as notices go, a teacher does not have to be notified that they are being let go due to a reduction in force. That is at the discretion of the superintendent and the school board, but for parcel cancellations and reduction in force, notice does not have to be given. Same rules apply in terms of hearings. If you are a tenured or non-probationary employee, you do have the right to a hearing if you are being let go due to reduction in force. Unfortunately, if you are not tenured and considered or a probationary classified employee, you do not have the right to a hearing. Those are the high points that I feel like you needed to know in terms of the Students First Act of 2011. I hope I've covered everything satisfactorily. Hope you can take this information in terms of who's covered, what's covered, and what the specifics are, and apply it to further your knowledge of the Students First Act. There are two great resources and references that I used in creating this presentation that are very valuable. One, the Alabama State Bar. If you go to that website, it really breaks down, it gives you the exact document of the Students First Act of 2011. So there's a lot of legalese and jargon in that, but you can still interpret it fairly easily, I think, in terms of the specifics and the different parameters and details within the Students First Act. Also, another valuable resource that I use for other things besides this PowerPoint is the CLAS website, the Council for Leaders in Alabama Schools website. Lots of valuable information here, and if you click on that link, it has kind of summarized the Students First Act of 2011. So between these two sites, I'm sure there are many others, but these are the two sites that I use that I found to be most valuable in creating this presentation. Again, hope you enjoyed it. Hope you're able to take away something from it and enhance your learning. Looking forward to seeing the other presentations on this as well. And everyone, have a great day. Thank you.